Good morning. Happy Tuesday. It always amazes me that I say specific words and people don't hear those specific words. They hear the words that they want to hear. I am arguing that the right is dead. I'm not arguing that the Republican Party is dead. The Republican Party is not dead. And I'm assuming that with the level of civil unrest, very similar to what happened in '68, that the Republican Party will be buoyed by the violence and the riots and the civil unrest and people wanting law and order, and they will do rather well at the ballot box in November. That's my assumption. But the Republican Party is not the right. The Republican Party is to the right of the Democrats. So if you're suggesting that people to the right of the Democrat Party will be elected, then you're correct. But will they be the right? I guess we really have to define what I mean by the right. By the right, I mean people like the John Birch Society. I mean people like Barry Goldwater. I mean people like William F. Buckley Jr., Thomas Sowell, Milton Friedman. People who are actually going to argue for right side of the spectrum political positions. Not just modifications to the Civil Rights Act, removal of the Civil Rights Act. Not just modifications to Roe v. Wade, but removal of Roe v. Wade. That side of the political spectrum is dead. That side of the political spectrum can no longer field candidates, can no longer even argue their positions, because they would instantly be drowned out by bigot, by racist, by homophobe. It doesn't matter if their argument about civil rights is that civil rights harms traditionally disadvantaged groups. It doesn't matter if their argument is that it prevents people from discriminating in favor of traditionally disadvantaged groups. It doesn't matter. I mean, in California, the Democrats just repealed the, I don't remember exactly, it was Proposition 209, but it said that the state couldn't discriminate on the basis of race, age, sex, things like that. The Democrats just repealed that. I guess it's waiting to be ratified, but still, it's the Democrats who repealed it. It's crazy. I mean, horseshoe theory at its finest, I guess. If you go far enough left, you end up on the right. But my point is not that there are no people to the right of Democrats anymore. My point is that those people who are to the right of the Democrats are still not on the right. At best, you get slightly right-leaning moderates. Trump himself. So Trump, the mere fact that Trump was elected, Trump is a left-leaning moderate, left-leaning centrist. He is a Clinton Democrat. The fact that he got elected tells you the state of the Republican Party. The Republican Party is the traditional home of the right. And the fact that they elected a slightly left-leaning centrist is very indicative that the right is dead. Ted Cruz was to the right of Donald Trump. Now, I think Ted Cruz is a smarmy piece of shit, but he is still to the right of Trump. And he got no ground. He got no traction. He could not get elected. In a Republican primary, the guy on the right could not get elected. Now pause to think about that. And even Ted Cruz isn't super right. Ted Cruz is kind of moderate right. Think about this. A Republican president, Trump, with a Republican-controlled Senate by a supermajority, his two Supreme Court justice nominations were Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, neither of which will take a strong position against Roe v. Wade. Think about that. Oh, well, President Trump defunded Planned Parenthood. Yes, but he also put in 2 Supreme Court justices who will not come out and openly say that they will actively vote against Roe v. Wade. In fact, there was I think it was a Louisiana state law that placed a limit on abortions. I believe that Gorsuch voted to stay that particular law, and I think Kavanaugh said the law should be stayed, but he voted against staying it for some reason. He's kind of milquetoast, sort of like me. I don't particularly much mind Kavanaugh, but he's certainly not on the right. Compare him to Thomas. I believe Thomas is the eldest of the Republican right-wing Supreme Court justices. He is openly against Roe v. Wade. He will say, Roe v. Wade was poorly decided and I would overturn it. And then you have Alito. I think he's the next oldest. He is slightly more tepid on Roe v. Wade. Then you've got Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. Both won't really take a stand on it. The right's dead. When is the last time you saw a right-wing argument that the church, that Christianity should be implemented back into our government? When did you last see a serious Republican politician say anything along those lines? A serious Republican politician who's elected, who is powerful. I mean, you just don't see it. If you look at the last batch of Republican presidents, I mean, you had Reagan, who he is credited at least with uniting the right, the Christian right, with the more conservative right, which may or may not have been good for the right. It did dilute it, but whatever. He at least did that. But then you look at George Bush Sr., very tepid on Christianity. George Bush Jr., very tepid on Christianity. Donald Trump, very tepid. I mean, you'd have to lie to yourself to say that Donald J. Trump was a Christian. You would have to lie to yourself. The man's probably been in a church once or twice in his life, but that's about as close as he's coming. Very tepid. So the lack of arguments against these things. I mean, not just oh well, we should modify it, but the lack of argument against these things by the leaders in the right wing, as we call it today, the Republican Party, since they're not capable of even fielding a conversation about removing these things, these left wing. Oh yeah, speaking of left wing sort of institutions, Social Security. The last time, I mean, I am not in favor of removing Social Security, but the last time we had a president seriously argue against it was George W. And I mean, that didn't go so well. But today, if Trump or somebody else started talking about removing or defunding Social Security, I mean, all hell would break loose. Just all hell would break loose. He wouldn't be able to have the conversation. He would instantly be unelectable if he tried to have that conversation. So that's what I'm trying to say about the right wing is dead. The language isn't there anymore to actually oppose, to actually attempt to get rid of these left-wing institutions that are now part and parcel of our government. They are firmly embedded in it. They're not going anywhere. And the right is essentially rolled over and bit the pillow. And so now we have a left-leaning, centrist, Republican president who is essentially a 1990s Clinton-era Democrat, and people are calling him right-wing. I mean, that's another thing. The term right-wing is a slur. Left wing isn't, right wing is. Fancy that, right? The right has lost the argument. The right is dead. I don't know how better to put it than that. If you can't even bring up a conversation with a serious political candidate, if a serious political candidate can't even come out and argue against having the social program in the first place, then the right is dead. Anyway, I think I've rambled long enough. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.